Came in 1961 when Betty and Barney Hill were abducted while driving home from vacation. Afterwards, neither could remember exactly what had happened during their encounter, and they could not account for 2 hours of time. On the morning after the incident, they noticed the vehicle had strange blotches that were soon found to be magnetized where the paint had been removed and revealing bare metal. Barney had scuff marks on his shoes as if he'd been dragged and an extremely painful back. Betty began to have recurring nightmares of creatures that were intent on kidnapping her and Barney. Eventually, they were referred to a psychiatrist who recommended that they undergo regression hypnosis. They were regressed separately, yet gave similar accounts in remarkable details. The most interesting part was when she asked where they were from and was shown a 3D map of a star system. Then, while under hypnosis, Betty reproduced a detailed sketch of the star system Zeta Reticuli. It meant nothing at the time because it was a full 6 years before astronomers even discovered it. Another interesting phenomenon associated with UFOs is the fact that abductees around the world are finding alien devices implanted in their bodies. Disturbing and invasive medical procedures have always been reported in cases of abduction. In recent years, dozens of abductees have come forward with something else. They are telling UFO researchers that their abduction memories have been followed up with the discovery of unknown objects embedded in their flesh. Jeff Harvey is one such case. Jeff and his father had a UFO encounter in 1967 when Jeff was 8. In 2001, Jeff got real sick from heavy metal poisoning, which caused him to lose a ton of weight and get extremely ill. And upon examination, there was something strange found buried in his upper thigh that was just a little bigger than a BB. The VA said it was consistent with shrapnel, but he had never been in combat or battle, so he had no reason why it could be there. When he had it surgically removed and analyzed, they actually detected radio frequency, and it was drawn up to the skin when a magnet was applied. A Gauss meter showed a very strong electromagnetic field of 10 milligauss. A radio frequency detector was used, and it was found to be emitting a radio frequency of over 59 gigahertz, which is in the range used by radio astronomers to detect radio frequency coming in from outer space. It also showed to be emitting a signal at almost 36 megahertz, which falls under the VHF band, which is used for satellite radio and terrestrial communication used by the government as well as consumers. The implant was also strange in that Jeff's tissue actually attached to it and embraced the object instead of rejecting it, and once it was removed, the radio frequency stopped being emitted from it. Contrary to popular accounts in the media and many articles on UFO sightings and encounters, the phenomenon is quite frequently reported by prominent, highly trained, and respected sources, including professionals in many different fields. This includes U.S. military and intelligence figures like J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, and Admiral Roscoe Hillenkotter, the first director of the CIA, as well as prominent political figures including Presidents Truman, Ford, Reagan, and Carter, and many respected scientists like Dr. Margaret Mead, the world-renowned anthropologist, and Dr. Herman Oberth, the father of modern rocketry. In addition to these eminent figures, equally impressive military, intelligence, and political figures have come forward with information and evidence about UFO reality in many different countries. In fact, there is scarcely a place on Earth that UFOs have not been witnessed and reported by numerous credible, reliable, and trained men and women. Also, contrary to popular belief, UFO reports are not limited to rural areas either. The phenomenon has been reported in major metropolitan areas across the globe. UFOs have also been reported quite frequently over civilian and military nuclear facilities, at military bases in the U.S. and worldwide, above and beneath the surface of the Earth's oceans, outside the Earth's atmosphere, and they are constantly reported on or around Earth's natural energy lines called ley lines, and especially where multiple energy lines meet called vortices. So you see, there's a wealth of credible evidence that comes from every corner of the world that should conclusively prove to any free thinker that aliens and UFOs are definitely real. It is neither a secret nor a coincidence that in antiquity every region of Earth had stories of flying serpents and dragons. In fact, according to ancient myths, legends, and the beliefs of most every early culture existing around the globe at that time, these reptilian sky gods came down to Earth and helped to establish, build, develop, and rule what we falsely consider today to be the first civilizations, including those of ancient Sumeria, Egypt, China, India, as well as across the Atlantic in Mexico and Peru. Based on Zechariah Sitchin's translation of ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets, the reptilian Anunnaki, also known by many other names, including the Nephilim from the Bible's book of Genesis, first arrived on a colonial expedition to Earth about 450,000 years ago, looking for minerals, especially gold, which was mined in Africa. Due to dissatisfaction with their working conditions, one Anunnaki named Enki suggested that primitive workers, or Homo sapiens, be created by genetic engineering as slaves to replace them in the gold mines by crossing extraterrestrial genes with those of Homo erectus, the first of which they called Adama, the basis for the biblical Adam and Eve. The tablets report that the human civilization in Sumer, Mesopotamia, which they called Eden, and was the basis for the biblical Garden of Eden, was set up under the guidance of these gods, and human kingship of reptilian lineage was inaugurated to provide intermediaries between mankind and the Anunnaki, thus creating the divine right of kings doctrine based on bloodline inheritance from the gods. Because of its extreme importance, ancient cultures kept meticulous records of bloodlines. In fact, the Bible is in part a genealogical record tracing these bloodlines back to antiquity. There are many sources that state that no one was allowed to depict the Anunnaki in their true reptilian shape, and the very few depictions that survive to our days, like these statues of reptilian royalty with their child heir found in the ancient Sumerian city of Ur, were probably made in secret. Modern scholars have relegated these beings to the mythological or religious realm of a Sumerian pantheon. They dispute the Sumerians' own descriptions of them as real, flesh and blood people who came to Earth to create and mentor them. And who are we to believe? The Sumerians themselves, who revolutionized the world, left a vast archaeological record of their accomplishments and sought no credit for these accomplishments? Or modern academics whose worldview descends from one that formerly denied the very existence of the Sumerians and now will not permit them such a history? The fact that scholars do not know the place of origin of the Sumerians or the roots of their language leaves open the possibility of the truth being the Sumerian accounts. All the ancient cultures have archaic stories and texts that tell similar stories that our modern scholars and academics want to suppress and not acknowledge as truth. By using this dragon symbolism, it is easy to see that these reptilian sky gods did not just establish Sumeria, but were involved in establishing other first civilizations as well. Indian mythology is full of references to the serpent gods and flying dragons that brought them knowledge. They call them the Nagas. In the Americas, the Indian cultures of Mexico and Peru all had names for the reptilian sky god that taught them the modern skills and gave them the gifts of civilization. He was called Quetzalcoatl by the Aztecs, Viracocha by the Incas, Kukulkan by the Mayas, Gucumatz by the Central Americans, Votan in Palenque, Zamna in Izamal, and Suma in Venezuela, all of which roughly translate in their respective languages into feathered or plumed serpent or snake, which of course is simply a dragon. In Peru, this plumed serpent god was called Amaru, and the territory known as Amaruca literally translates as land of the plumed serpents and is where America got its name from. The dragon was also a symbol of the sky gods in Babylon, Assyria, Phoenicia, Persia, Hindustan, and many others. In fact, the entire culture of China is based on the dragon and the serpent race, as the Chinese believe that a dragon fathered the first dynasty of divine emperors, and subsequent emperors claimed their right to rule because they were descended from the serpent gods. Back then, astronomy and astrology were part of the same sacred science, and the center of the universe, the pole star, which is the most important point in the universe, was Thuban, also known as Alpha Draconis, and it was a star or star system in the circumpolar constellation of Draco. The most ancient bloodlines are symbolically related to Draco, the great dragon, around which the heavens revolved, and so did earthly civilization, as above, so below. This astronomical event is represented by the circumpunct symbol, which is also the solar symbol for the sun, the alchemical symbol for gold, and represents the Egyptian sun god Ra. Interestingly, not only the Egyptians, but the Incas, Mesoamericans, and the Chinese all believed that their rulers were direct descendants of the sun god. The circumpunct is also representative of more esoteric concepts, including the self and the creative spark of pure divine consciousness within people, linking everyone to the creative mind of a universal God, thus making each person a co-creator of our reality. It also corresponds with the Keter, or the topmost Sephiroth of the Tree of Life in the Jewish mystical Kabbalah. It is considered so sublime that in their foundational work, the Zohar, it is called the most hidden of all hidden things. Besides ancient stories of civilizations having been established by dragon sky gods, the best evidence to prove that these ancient civilizations are all intimately linked to one common heritage comes through the insane amount of similarities and commonalities shared by all of them, including the fact that they all just started popping up out of nowhere at around the same time in Earth's history, all around the world, allegedly with absolutely no precedent, and then they each proceeded to develop virtually instant agriculture and built enormous megalithic structures, especially pyramids. Each had similar traditions of early history, including a Garden of Delight, a Golden Age, a global flood, one original language, and worldwide they shared similar systems of writing, languages, hieroglyphics, and symbols, including the swastika, a sun sign, as well as numerous specialized and intricate glyphs, especially snake and sun combinations. The serpent and the sun are two of the oldest and most widespread symbols used since ancient times. Serpent and sun worship both began at the same time in human history and were universal throughout all ancient cultures. In fact, these two symbols represent similar meanings, and every part of the ancient world was covered with temples sacred to both the dragon and the sun. In religion, mythology, and literature, serpents and suns represent a creative life force, spiritual wisdom, knowledge, power, energy, life, and healing. Actually, many mythologies from ancient traditions throughout the world identify the sun with the serpent as one single extremely powerful and benevolent life-giving force, the sun, which sends her loving serpent hands or energy rays to caress the earth and its inhabitants and to bless it all with life. The first symbols of serpents were attributed to Enki, the DNA manipulator, and fittingly his emblem was the entwined serpents or caduceus. The symbol of the caduceus was later transferred to one of Enki's counterparts, Ningishzida, also known as Thoth, author of the Emerald Tablets, and then to others of his family, because it was, among other things, a code for the bloodline of Enki's heritage. From this symbol of the serpent, the power was transferred to the symbol of the dragon, also a sun symbol, who continued to hold the knowledge. The archetype of the dragon has represented many different symbolic meanings. Among these are power, strength, wisdom, knowledge, and energy, and transcendental consciousness. The dragon represents the universal energetic field as well as the unknown and hidden energy in man and nature. The word dragon comes from the Greek verb durkin, which means to see. The dragon is the principle of clear seeing, the ability to see things in a new light as they really are, beyond all illusions. For this reason, the dragon has great wisdom and power in myths. Ancient cultures also shared many other customs like mummification, burial, circumcision, and the binding of babies' heads to produce an elongated skull. This was deemed very attractive as well as a sign of intelligence and was practiced by the Maya, Incas, Celts, Egyptians, and Basques. They each also produced similar systems of government, societal rules, class distinction, and a pyramidal social hierarchy. On the top of the pyramid were their bloodlines, and on the bottom were the slaves, peasants, and undesirables. If there was any social mobility, it was downward. Similar versions of this hierarchy were developed by civilizations all over the ancient Near East, such as in Mesopotamia, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Egypt, as well as the Far East in China and India, in the Mesoamerican cultures of Mexico and Peru, and of course throughout the European empires. Now, the question is, who were these ancient rulers perched atop each of the pyramidal social hierarchies of antiquity? Well, available evidence shows that the ancient dragon bloodline royalty was primarily of Nordic Aryan stock, but who or what were the Nordic Aryans? Their name is derived from the Indo-European root word "air," meaning noble. So the word Aryan, depending on where you look, is translated of noble birth or honorable, respectable, noble. They called themselves the noble ones or the superior ones. Aryans or white people are generally divided into three groups. These are the Mediterraneans, the Alpines, and the Nordics. Nordics, recognizable by their tallness, light hair and eye color, and long skull, are the ones that most people are talking about when they speak of the archetypal Aryans. But there are also several different Nordic subtypes. The Boraby type, which have large square heads, brown or blonde hair, and light, mainly blue eyes. And the Bruns, who are also big-headed, but with frequent red-headedness and prominence of darker shades of brown with minimal blondism. But the Hallstatt Nordic is your stereotypical Aryan, being ash blonde, blue-eyed, tall and slender, straight and narrow-nosed, and relatively long-headed. Throughout history, the Nordic Aryans seemed to be the real movers and shakers, and definitely the ones to watch. They were a tough, tribal, and nomadic peoples who were fierce and warlike, and their religion reflected this, dominated as it was by a sky god that enjoins warfare and conquest, commonly known as Zeus. For thousands of years, this race of warriors, sailors, pioneers, and explorers have poured forth from their Northland homes in conquering waves over Europe and many parts of Asia, sometimes conquering peoples vastly superior in numbers by their fierce energy, and then establishing themselves as their aristocratic ruling class, and then perpetuating their rule with their political ability.